If I had known whose bed I was sleeping in, I would have stayed awake all night. That was the first thought that crossed my mind when I opened my eyes at 2:17 in the morning and realized I wasn't alone. For 3 seconds, I didn't move. I didn't even breathe properly. Rain whispered against the floor-to-ceiling windows somewhere behind me, soft and steady, while the unfamiliar room sat almost completely dark. The sheets beneath my fingers were cool and impossibly smooth. The air smelled faintly of cedar, rain, and expensive coffee. None of it belonged to me. Then a man's voice came from the shadows. "You're awake." I froze. At the far end of the room, someone was sitting in a chair beside the windows. I could only make out his silhouette at first. Broad shoulders, dark suit, one ankle resting over the opposite knee. Perfectly still. He wasn't approaching me. Somehow, that made him more intimidating. "Who are you?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. The man leaned forward just enough for the city lights to catch his face. Dark hair, sharp features, gray eyes that seemed completely awake despite the hour. He looked somewhere in his mid-30s, and there was something unsettling about how calm he was. "Interesting question," he said. "Considering you're in my bed." My stomach dropped. 12 hours earlier, I'd been Claire Bennett, 27-year-old floral designer, worrying about centerpieces and whether the hotel would actually pay my invoice on time. Now I was apparently Claire Bennett, professional trespasser. Oh my God. I threw the blanket aside and sat up. "I'm so sorry. They told me vendors could rest upstairs after cleanup. Room 1806. I must have heard 1816. I worked almost 20 hours today, and I just needed 5 minutes." His expression didn't change. "You chose my bedroom for those 5 minutes." Apparently, I'm ambitious when I'm exhausted. For the first time, something almost resembling amusement touched his face. Almost. I reached for my shoes beside the bed. My black flats were still damp from running through the Chicago rain after the gala deliveries. My coat hung over a chair near the door, exactly where I'd left it before collapsing onto what I'd assumed was some ridiculously luxurious employee guest bed. "I'll leave," I said. "Immediately. You'll never see me again." I stood, grabbed my coat, and started toward the door. That was when I noticed the room itself. This wasn't a hotel suite. Not really. There were no brochures. No room service menus. No decorative clutter designed for strangers. Everything felt personal, controlled. A watch rested beside a closed book. A charcoal jacket hung over another chair. One framed photograph faced inward on the nightstand. Whoever this man was, this wasn't merely a room he rented. It was his space, and I had walked straight into it. I reached for the handle. "Wait." His voice had changed. Not louder, sharper. My hand stopped inches from the door. "What?" He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking beyond me, toward the narrow strip of light beneath the door. Shadows moved across it. Once. Then again. Footsteps stopped outside. The man rose. He was taller than I'd realized, easily over 6 feet, and the entire atmosphere seemed to shift when he stood. He crossed the room without hurry and glanced through the security display beside the door. Whatever he saw erased the faint amusement from his face. "Mr. Cole," a man's voice called softly from the hallway. My eyes moved to the screen. 2 men in dark suits stood outside. Neither looked like hotel staff. The stranger turned toward me. "Claire." My blood went cold. I had never told him my name. "How do you know who I am?" He didn't answer. His gaze dropped briefly to my florist badge still clipped to my blouse, then returned to the door. I felt ridiculous for missing something so obvious, but relief lasted less than a second. Another shadow appeared on the monitor at the far end of the hallway. Then another. The man beside me became perfectly still. "Put your coat down." "Excuse me. You're not leaving through that door." My fingers tightened around the fabric. "I think I've caused enough problems tonight." I reached for the handle again. His eyes met mine. Calm. Controlled. Certain. Then he said one word that would divide my life into everything before that night and everything after it. "Stay." For 1 second, I thought about ignoring him. I had already embarrassed myself enough for one night, and staying inside a stranger's penthouse because he told me to sounded like the kind of decision sensible people avoided. Then the hallway monitor changed. A third man appeared near the elevators. Unlike the two standing outside the door, he kept his face turned away from the camera. Adrian Cole noticed him too. "Step away from the door, Claire." "Why?" "Because the men outside are mine. The one by the elevator is not." My hand dropped from the handle. The rain suddenly sounded louder against the windows. What does that mean? Adrian crossed to a control panel and touched the screen. The lights went dark. Chicago remained beyond the glass, thousands of windows glittering beneath the storm. But inside the penthouse there was only shadow. It means someone came upstairs who was never invited. My heart started beating faster. Maybe he is another exhausted florist who cannot read room numbers. Adrian looked at me. Even in the darkness, I could tell he understood exactly what I was doing. Joking was how I kept fear from becoming panic. Stay away from the windows, he said. You really enjoy giving orders. Tonight, you should consider listening. I folded my arms. That is not reassuring. A soft knock came from the door. Mr. Cole, the voice outside said. We need to move you. Adrian pressed a button beside the monitor. Reason: unidentified guest on 18. Security is checking the elevators. Adrian glanced toward me. And the florist? Silence followed. My stomach tightened. The voice finally answered. Someone downstairs has been asking about a woman matching her description. Every sarcastic response disappeared from my mind. Why would anyone ask about me? Adrian ended the connection and walked toward the chair where I had left my florist bag. Where were you before you came upstairs? The grand ballroom. We finished breaking down the centerpieces around 1:30. Did anyone speak to you? Hundreds of people spoke to me. It was a gala. Anyone unusual? I stared at him. You are currently winning that category. That almost smile appeared again, then vanished. Think. I tried. Champagne glasses. White roses. Hotel employees rolling tables away. Wealthy guests lingering beneath chandeliers while my crew packed vases into crates. Then I remembered something. There was a man near the service hallway. Adrian's eyes sharpened. What man? I do not know. Maybe 40. Gray coat. He bumped into me when I was carrying flowers to the freight elevator. He apologized and kept walking. Adrian became very quiet. Which elevator did you take upstairs? The service elevator. Did anyone follow you? Not that I noticed. He looked toward my coat. Check your pockets. Why? Claire. There was something in his voice now that made me stop arguing. I searched the right pocket. Nothing. Then the left. My fingers touched something hard and unfamiliar. I slowly pulled out a small black flash drive. The room seemed to shrink around me. That is not mine. Adrian did not reach for it. He simply stared. I have never seen this before. I believe you. Somehow, that frightened me more. The monitor beside the door flashed. The unidentified man had disappeared from the elevator. Adrian checked another camera. Empty hallway. Another. Empty stairwell. Where did he go? I whispered. Adrian finally looked at me. That is the problem. Another knock sounded, faster this time. Adrian moved between me and the door without touching me. You asked if staying was a request. I swallowed. Yes. His gray eyes held mine. It was not. And now? He glanced at the flash drive in my hand. Now it is the reason you are still safe. I stared at the flash drive resting in my palm as if it had suddenly become the heaviest object in Chicago. 10 minutes ago, my biggest problem had been explaining why I was sleeping in a stranger's bed. Now someone had apparently used me to carry something important enough to bring unfamiliar men 18 floors above a private gala. I want to go home, I said. Adrian's expression remained calm. I know. No, I mean right now. I want my apartment, my terrible radiator, and the neighbor upstairs who practices trumpet at 7 in the morning. You have a trumpet player upstairs? That is the part you heard. Another knock sounded. Adrian checked the monitor before opening the door. One of the men from the hallway stepped inside. He looked about 50, silver beginning at his temples, his dark suit immaculate despite the late hour. The 18th floor is secure, Mr. Cole. The unidentified man. Adrian asked. Gone. Security believes he used the east service stairs. Believes. The temperature in Adrian's voice seemed to fall. The man straightened. We are reviewing every camera. Adrian nodded once. That was all. The man immediately left. I watched the door close. Who are you? Adrian turned toward me. Adrian Cole. I figured that part out. Then asked the question you actually mean. I hesitated. There are moments when your instincts understand something before your mind is willing to say it aloud. I thought about the private floor, the men outside, the way hotel security seemed to answer to him rather than management. Most of all, I thought about how nobody asked Adrian for permission twice. What do you do? I asked. I own hotels. That is not what I asked. His eyes settled on mine. No, it was not. He walked toward the windows, keeping several feet between himself and the glass. Below us, Chicago shimmered beneath the rain. Cole Hospitality owns this building, 3 restaurants, 2 residential towers, and several transportation companies. That sounds almost normal. Almost. My stomach tightened. And the part that is not normal? Adrian was silent long enough to answer without answering. I had grown up in Chicago. Certain names traveled differently through a city. You heard them quietly in restaurants, in neighborhoods where everyone knew which questions not to ask. Cole was one of those names. I had just never connected it to the man standing 10 feet away from me. Oh, I whispered. Adrian looked back. You understand. I understand that I picked possibly the worst room in the entire hotel. You picked the safest. I almost laughed. There are strangers searching for me, and they have not entered this room. That confidence should have irritated me. Instead, for reasons I did not want to examine, it steadied my breathing. I looked around again. The penthouse suddenly made sense. The controlled emptiness. The cameras. The private elevator. The men outside who moved whenever Adrian spoke. Power was not something he displayed. It was built into the room around him. Give me the drive, he said. I held it tighter. Why? His eyebrow lifted slightly. You are negotiating with me? I am asking a question. Most people do not. Maybe most people did not accidentally sleep in your bed. That almost smile returned. This time, I was certain I saw it. Then his attention shifted past me to the monitor. His expression changed instantly. The elevator doors had opened again. A man stepped onto the floor. He was wearing a gray coat. My breath stopped. That is him, I whispered. The man from downstairs. Adrian looked at the flash drive in my hand, then at me. For the first time that night, I saw something beneath all that control. Not fear. Recognition. Claire, he said quietly, whatever happened in that ballroom tonight, it was never an accident. The man in the gray coat took 3 steps into the hallway before Adrian touched the control panel beside the door. The elevator behind him immediately closed. A second later, 2 of Adrian's men appeared on the monitor from the opposite corridor. Nobody rushed. Nobody shouted. That was the part one found most unsettling. Everything happened with the quiet precision of people who already knew what to do. What happens to him? I asked. Adrian kept his eyes on the screen. He answers questions. That sounds ominous. It was meant to sound accurate. I looked down at the black flash drive still trapped between my fingers. You said this was not an accident. The drive was not. Then explain it. Adrian turned toward me. You were convenient. Somehow, that offended me. Thank you. You were working the gala. You had access to service corridors. You were carrying bags, boxes, flowers. Nobody would question you moving through the hotel. I remembered the man colliding with me near the freight elevator. His apology. His hand briefly touching my arm as he steadied himself. At the time, I had barely looked at him. He put it in my pocket. Most likely. Why? Because he needed it moved without being seen carrying it himself. I swallowed. So, I was a delivery service without knowing it. Yes. Adrian extended his hand. Now give it to me. I looked at his open palm, then at his face. You still have not told me what is on it. Because I do not know. That is convenient. His jaw tightened slightly. Claire. No. Everyone around you might jump when you lower your voice, but I do not work for you. Silence. I immediately wondered whether challenging a man like Adrian Cole at 2:30 in the morning was evidence of courage or sleep deprivation. Then something unexpected happened. He lowered his hand. Fair. I blinked. Fair. You want an explanation before surrendering something that was placed on you without permission. That is reasonable. That was not the response I had prepared myself for. Adrian walked to a desk near the windows and opened a laptop. We check it together. I stayed where I was. Together? You wanted transparency. I did not expect you to know the word. There it was again. That tiny shift at the corner of his mouth. Sit down, Claire. That still sounds like an order. Consider it furniture advice. Against my better judgment, I crossed the room. He connected the drive through a small security device rather than directly to the computer. Files appeared. Dozens of them. Dates. Account numbers. Shipping records. Names I did not recognize. Adrian stopped moving. The humor disappeared from his face. What? I asked. He scrolled once, then again. These are internal records. From your hotels? From businesses very few people know I control. I looked at the screen. Then whoever had this works for you. Adrian said nothing. He did not need to. A folder near the bottom carried a name. Michael Grant. Adrian stared at it for several seconds. Who is Michael? I asked. Someone I have trusted for 12 years. The rain tapped softly against the glass. Suddenly, the danger outside felt different. Closer. Personal. Adrian disconnected the drive and stood. We are leaving. I thought this was the safest room. It was. That single word tightened something in my chest. He picked up his jacket and looked toward the door. Someone inside my organization gave a stranger access to this floor. Until I know who opened that door, nowhere in this building is safe. I grabbed my coat. Adrian paused when he saw me doing it. Stay beside me. I met his eyes. Another order? His expression remained unreadable. For the next 10 minutes, yes. The private elevator opened behind a concealed panel I had not noticed before. 2 men waited inside. Adrian stepped forward, then stopped and looked back at me. Claire, once those doors close, you are going to see a side of Chicago most people never know exists. I tightened my grip on my bag and followed him. I was supposed to arrange flowers tonight. Adrian pressed the button for the underground level. Tonight stopped being about flowers the moment someone chose you. The private elevator opened into an underground garage, so quiet I could hear the rainwater dripping from my coat onto the concrete. 3 black vehicles waited beneath white fluorescent lights, engines already running. Nobody asked Adrian where we were going. Nobody needed to. One man opened the rear door of the center vehicle, and Adrian looked at me. Get in. I stopped. You really have only one conversational setting, do you not? His gray eyes held mine for a second. Please get in. Better. I climbed inside. Adrian followed, leaving enough space between us that I noticed it. The doors closed, and within seconds we were moving through downtown Chicago. I watched familiar streets slide past tinted windows and tried to understand how my ordinary Thursday night had become this. Where are we going? My house. I turned toward him. Absolutely not. Claire, I already accidentally slept in one place you own. I am not making this a tour. He exhaled through his nose. Your apartment is not secure until we know who has your information. How would they have my information? Adrian glanced at my florist badge. My full name was printed beneath the company logo. Right. I removed it and dropped it into my bag. I hate tonight. Understandable. 20 minutes later, the city lights thinned, and the vehicle turned through iron gates into a quiet property near Lake Michigan. I had expected something dramatic. Instead, Adrian's house was restrained. Stone, glass, dark wood, beautiful without trying to prove it. Inside, the silence surprised me most. No crowd, no party, no display of wealth beyond what the building itself quietly admitted. Adrian showed me to a guest room on the 2nd floor. You can sleep here. I stared at the bed. I think I have reached my lifetime limit for sleeping in unfamiliar rooms. Then do not sleep. Excellent hospitality. He left without answering. I waited 5 minutes before following the smell of coffee downstairs. Adrian stood in the kitchen with his jacket gone and his sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms, staring at a coffee machine like it had personally offended him. Do you actually know how to use that? I asked. Of course. The machine beeped angrily. I raised an eyebrow. It seems unconvinced. 10 minutes later, I was sitting at a marble island with coffee I had made myself, while Adrian spoke quietly on the phone across the room. For the first time, he looked tired. Not weak, just human. When he ended the call, he noticed me rubbing my hands together. Without a word, he adjusted the thermostat. Warm air began moving through the room. Thank you, I said. He nodded. My eyes wandered toward a photograph on a shelf near the hallway. Adrian looked about 10 years old, standing beside a smiling woman with the same gray eyes. Your mother? I asked. His attention followed mine. Something changed in his face. Yes. She looks kind. She was. The past tense settled between us. I am sorry. Adrian stared at the photograph. She trusted someone she should not have. His voice was quieter now. After she died, I learned to keep certain doors closed. I thought about the penthouse. The empty bedroom. The photograph turned inward beside his bed. Is that why nobody goes into that room? He looked at me. Nobody has slept there except me since I bought the hotel. I nearly dropped my coffee. Nobody. And then I showed up with wet shoes and florist pins. A faint smile appeared. You were difficult to ignore. Silence returned, but it felt different now. Less dangerous. I looked at the man everyone obeyed and saw, briefly, The boy in the photograph who had learned that control could feel safer than trust. Then Adrian's phone lit up on the counter. He read the message. His expression hardened. "What happened?" I asked. He turned the screen face down. "Michael Grant is missing." My stomach tightened. "The man you trusted for 12 years? Yes." Adrian looked toward the dark windows. "And according to hotel security records, Michael was the person who authorized access to my floor tonight." By 4 in the morning, I had learned something important about Adrian Cole. The quieter he became, the more everyone around him moved. He made 3 phone calls from the kitchen. No threats, no raised voice, just names, locations, and questions delivered with almost unnatural calm. By the time he placed his phone on the counter, 2 different teams were searching for Michael Grant. Hotel security records were being reviewed, and someone was checking every employee who had worked the gala. I sat there holding my coffee with both hands, wondering when my life had become something I would have laughed at 24 hours earlier. "I need my phone," I said. Adrian looked at me. "It is being checked." "You took my phone?" "One of my people did." I put the coffee down. Without asking me. It was necessary. According to whom? His expression told me he considered the answer obvious. That irritated me more. My apartment is being watched, my phone is apparently being inspected, and there were 2 men outside the guest room when I went upstairs. They are there for your protection. I did not ask for protection that looks exactly like surveillance. Adrian leaned against the counter. "Someone used you tonight. Until I understand why, precautions are necessary." "Precautions for you, maybe. For both of us." I stood. Exhaustion had burned through fear and left something sharper behind. "You do not get to reorganize my life because you are worried." His eyes narrowed slightly. "This is not about worry." "Then what is it?" He did not answer quickly enough. I stepped closer, stopping several feet away. "You do not own me, Adrian." The words landed harder than I expected. The entire kitchen seemed to go silent around them. For a moment, I remembered exactly who I was speaking to. A man whose name made hotel employees lower their voices. A man whose instructions moved people across Chicago before sunrise. But Adrian did not become angry. He looked at me as if I had just said something nobody had dared to say in years. "I know," he said. "That stopped me." "Do you?" "Yes. Because your behavior suggests otherwise." His gaze shifted toward the hallway. One of his men stood near the front entrance. Adrian called him over. "Remove the security outside Miss Bennett's room." The man hesitated. "Sir." "You heard me." "Yes, sir." He disappeared upstairs. Adrian picked up his phone and made another call. "Return Claire's phone. Do not access anything personal. Check only for unauthorized tracking or compromised applications." He ended the call. I stared at him. That was surprisingly reasonable. "Do not sound so disappointed." "I am adjusting." Adrian looked tired again. "You were right." I almost asked him to repeat it for historical documentation. Instead, I said, "About what?" "Protection without consent becomes another kind of cage." His voice was quiet. I should have asked. Something inside me softened despite my better judgment. "Thank you." 10 minutes later, my phone was returned. No strange applications. No tracking. Just 17 missed calls from my assistant, Rachel, who apparently believed I had vanished somewhere between the white roses and the loading dock. I texted her that I was safe and would explain later. Then Adrian placed a small box on the counter. "What is that?" "A replacement phone." I stared at him. "We literally just discussed this." "I purchased it before the discussion." "Return it." "Fine." I blinked. "That easy." "You said no." For words. Nothing dramatic. Yet somehow they mattered more than they should have. I looked toward the windows. The rain had finally stopped, and the first pale line of morning was beginning to appear over Lake Michigan. Adrian stood beside me, silent. Not commanding. Not deciding. Just there. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Adrian saw the screen, but did not reach for it. He waited. My choice. I answered. "Hello." A familiar male voice spoke softly. "Claire Bennett." My stomach tightened. "Who is this?" A pause. Then the answer came. "Michael Grant. And if Adrian Cole is standing beside you, do not tell him I called." I kept my eyes on Adrian while Michael's voice traveled through the phone. Adrian did not move closer. He did not reach for the device. After everything we had just said about choice, he simply waited. "Why are you calling me?" I asked. "Because you have something that belongs to me." My fingers tightened around the phone. "The flash drive." Silence answered before Michael did. Adrian has it now, does he not? I looked toward Adrian. His expression changed just enough to tell me he could hear Michael's voice through the quiet kitchen. You put it in my coat, I said. I needed someone unnoticed. You mean someone disposable? Another pause. I would not use that word. I would. Adrian's gray eyes stayed on mine. Michael lowered his voice. Listen carefully. Adrian is not telling you everything. Meet me at the Grand Hotel at 9 this morning. Service entrance on Wabash. Come alone, and I will explain why you were chosen. Why would I trust you? Because I can prove Adrian knew about the drive before you ever woke up. The call ended. For several seconds, all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator. Adrian finally spoke. He wants you back at the hotel. It was not a question. Yes. You are not going. I gave him a look. He closed his eyes briefly. I would strongly prefer that you did not go. Better. Claire, this is not funny. I know. I set the phone down. He says you knew about the drive before I woke up. Adrian's face became unreadable. I knew something had been taken. I did not know you had it. Why did you not tell me? Because when I found you in my room, I thought you might be involved. That hurt more than it should have. You thought I was working with them? For approximately 3 minutes. Comforting. Then you apologized to my furniture. I stared at him. I knocked over a lamp. You apologized to it. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Almost. Then I remembered Michael's invitation. I need answers. So do I. Then we get them without using me as bait. Adrian studied me for a moment. Agreed. At 8:45, I was not at the Grand Hotel. I was sitting in a quiet coffee shop across the street with my phone on the table and Adrian several feet away. Michael had called again with new instructions, but something bothered me. The first time he mentioned the service entrance on Wabash. Now he wanted me to use the loading entrance on State Street. He changed the location. I whispered. Adrian nodded. Why? I looked through the window toward the hotel. Delivery trucks moved along the curb. Employees entered through a side door. Then I saw it. A florist van parked half a block away. My company's logo was printed across the side. Except it was wrong. The rose in our logo was red. That one was white. That is not our van. Adrian followed my gaze. You are sure? I designed the logo myself. My phone buzzed. Michael, I can see you. Come outside. Cold moved through me. He knows where I am. Adrian stood, but I caught his sleeve. Wait. I looked around the coffee shop. Nobody was watching me. Nobody except a man reflected in the glass behind the counter, sitting near the back with his phone raised slightly. Gray coat. The same man from the gala. Adrian, I whispered. Do not look behind you. His expression did not change. Why? Because Michael is not the only person who followed me here. For the first time, I understood the trap. Michael had never needed me to bring him the flash drive. He needed everyone to believe I still had it. And somehow, I had become the easiest way to draw Adrian exactly where they wanted him. The realization hit me so cleanly that my fear disappeared for a second. Michael had not chosen me because I mattered. He had chosen me because Adrian did. We need to leave, I whispered. Adrian did not turn toward the man in the gray coat. Can you walk normally? I arrange flowers for wealthy people while they complain about peonies. I can survive awkward situations. This one is slightly different. I noticed. Adrian placed cash beside his untouched coffee and stood. I followed him toward the rear exit instead of the front. Nobody ran. Nobody raised a voice. Behind us, a chair scraped against the floor. Adrian heard it too. Keep walking. We entered the kitchen corridor, past 2 startled employees, and stepped through a delivery door into the alley. A black vehicle was already turning toward us. Adrian opened the rear door. We got inside, and only when the car merged into morning traffic did I finally breathe normally again. How did your driver know? I asked. I sent him a message while you were watching the reflection. I did not see you touch your phone. That was the point. I leaned back against the seat. Michael wanted you at that hotel. Yes. And he used me to get you there. Adrian's jaw tightened. Yes. So what happens now? He looked through the window. Now you disappear from this problem. I sat up. Excuse me. You go home. My people secure your building. You return to your life. Your people. At a distance. Adrian. He exhaled. With your permission. Better. By noon, the flash drive had given Adrian enough information to understand the betrayal. Michael had been quietly selling private business records and manipulating hotel access for months. The gray-coated man had been working with him. Adrian did not tell me what consequences they would face, and I did not ask. I only cared that nobody was searching for me anymore. That afternoon, Adrian drove me home himself. My apartment looked almost painfully ordinary after his world. Secondhand couch, unwashed coffee mug, 3 buckets of leftover eucalyptus beside the window. I had never been so happy to see any of it. Adrian stood just inside the doorway. Someone will remain downstairs tonight. I turned. We talked about this. I am asking. I studied him. One person. Downstairs. Until tomorrow morning. Agreed. He nodded, but he did not leave. What? I asked. Nothing. You are terrible at nothing. His eyes moved around my apartment as if memorizing it. You should rest. And you should stop telling me what to do. That faint smile appeared. I am learning. Then I asked the question that had been waiting since dawn. If I had not ended up in your room, what would you have done? Adrian became still. Found the drive. Found Michael. And me? You would have gone home without ever knowing my name. Something about that answer hurt unexpectedly. Maybe that would have been easier. Yes. He said it immediately. No performance. No attempt to charm me. But, I asked. Adrian looked at me for a long moment. Easier is not always better. My heart did something inconvenient. I stepped toward the door and opened it. I need time. He nodded. Take it. No argument. No command. No request that I stay close to him. He simply walked into the hallway. Adrian. He turned. Thank you for keeping me safe. His expression softened. Thank you for reminding me that keeping someone safe does not mean deciding everything for them. Then he left. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time since 2:17 that morning, nobody was watching me. Nobody was following me. Nobody was telling me where to go. I had exactly what I had demanded. Freedom. So I could not explain why, standing alone in my quiet apartment, I suddenly wished he had stayed. For the next 3 weeks, Adrian Cole did exactly what I had asked him to do. Nothing. No black vehicles outside my apartment. No unexpected deliveries. No expensive gifts pretending not to be apologies. No mysterious phone calls asking whether I had eaten dinner. He disappeared from my life so completely that I should have been relieved. Instead, I started noticing the silence. I noticed it while trimming roses at 6 in the morning. I noticed it when my radiator started making that terrible knocking sound again. I noticed it every time someone ordered coffee, and I remembered Adrian staring suspiciously at his own coffee machine. It was ridiculous. I had known the man for less than a day. Somehow, that day had rearranged something inside me. Then, on a Friday afternoon, my assistant Rachel dropped a folder onto my work table. Grand Hotel wants the spring installation. I stopped cutting eucalyptus. The Grand Hotel? 40 centerpieces, lobby arrangement, private dining room. Good money. I stared at the contract. Adrian's name was nowhere on it. I signed. 2 weeks later, I walked through the same lobby where everything had begun. The chandeliers still glowed. The marble still reflected every expensive shoe crossing it. But I was different. I finished the installation shortly after 9 that evening. I could have left through the service entrance. Instead, I found myself standing inside the elevator. 18th floor. My finger hovered over the button. Then I pressed it. The doors opened onto a quiet hallway. No guards. No shadows. Just soft light and the distant sound of rain against glass. The penthouse door was partly open. I knocked anyway. Come in. His voice. I stepped inside. Adrian stood near the windows wearing a charcoal suit, one hand in his pocket. For the first time since meeting him, surprise completely broke through his composure. Claire, you sound disappointed. I'm trying to determine whether you are real. Still dramatic, I see. His mouth curved slightly. You came back. The hotel hired me. The hotel has 400 rooms. I got lost. Again. Apparently I have a condition. He laughed. Not the restrained, almost smile I remembered. An actual laugh. Quiet, brief, human. Then neither of us spoke. I looked toward the bedroom. The door was open now. The photograph of his mother sat upright on the nightstand instead of facing the wall. Something about that small change told me more than anything he could have said. You kept your promise, I said. Which one? You gave me space. Adrian nodded. You asked for it. Was it difficult? Extremely. I smiled. Good. He stepped closer, but stopped several feet away, always leaving the distance for me to close. Claire, I owe you an apology. For which part? There are several options. That is promising. His expression softened. I spent years believing control was the same thing as safety. Then you walked into my room by mistake, and spent 12 hours explaining why I was wrong. I am efficient. You are exhausting. And yet here we are. Rain traced silver lines down the windows behind him. I looked at the man who could command an entire room without raising his voice, and suddenly I understood why his silence had followed me home. Are you going to tell me to stay again? I asked. Adrian's eyes held mine. No. My heart sank before I could stop it. Then he continued. This time, I am asking. I set my florist bag on the table. Then ask. For once, Adrian Cole looked uncertain. Not the businessman. Not the man everyone obeyed. Just Adrian. Stay. The first time he said that word, I stayed because I was afraid to walk through the door. This time, the door was open. Nothing stood between me and the elevator. Nothing stopped me from leaving. I looked at the open doorway, then back at him. Okay. His shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly. I stayed because I chose to. And maybe that was the moment I finally understood him. Adrian could control hotels, companies, rooms full of powerful men, and more of Chicago than I would ever want to know. But he had learned that one human heart could not be commanded. It could only be given a reason to stay.